So Armin and I and Ario were just catching up, and Armin spent some time recently in England, Switzerland, and Portugal. And I was guessing, Ario, just before you joined us, that of the three countries that your brother probably liked Portugal best. Portugal is a fantastic country. I mean, people are very friendly. It's very safe. It's very European now.
Yeah.
The highways are incredible, right?
I've never been on the highway. I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Well, the highways, I mean, I've traveled all over Portugal. But anyway, I was saying that I have a client, just out of interest, I'll mention it to you guys and put it on the recording. I have a client in Portugal. She's a middle-aged woman with two kids who lives in the northern town of Porto. Porto's about 1 million people or so. And believe it or not, she has developed an urban glamping business. Uh,
Urban.
and you know, I mean, she has a beautiful house in Porto, and she has a side yard and a backyard, which are quite big. And in Porto, and in many cities in Portugal, you'll notice, you probably noticed in Lisbon that many of the houses are very narrow.
Mhm.
And so, Ariel, they're very narrow and very tall. Do you know why that is, Armin?
Um, Not really.
I'll tell you why. Property taxes in Portugal are levied on the basis of linear feet or meters of frontage.
Oh, wow.
So the wider your lot is and the wider your building is, the more property taxes you pay. So a lot of people have very narrow buildings. They go up 3 or 4 stories. They're very skinny because it reduces their property taxes. And it
Wow.
kind of makes sense when you think about it because services, whether it's roads or water mains or sewers or anything else, stormwater, is really not proportional to area. It's proportional more or less to linear distances, right? I mean, longer pipes.
Mhm.
And so it makes more sense. But anyway, that's why they're so squished together. But she has a property that has a lot of frontage, so she's paying quite a bit of property taxes. And I asked her whether I'm just going to get rid of that. I asked her what she might do with her side yard and her backyard. And what she did is Porto has about 8 months of good weather, and she developed beautiful glamping tents in her backyard and her side yard inside the city. And she's adding about 5 or 6 thousand euros a month to her income, which doesn't sound like a whole lot if you're a wealthy dude, but to a middle-aged woman who's on her own with two kids, that was a hell of a change. So, and it's been very successful, and it was kind of a surprise in a way because people who visit tourist towns, whether it's you or me, not everybody wants to stay in a fancy hotel.
Wow.
So it worked out quite well for
So
her.
do people stay in tents or?
So she has beautiful glamping tents.
Oh, wow.
It's not camping, it's glamping. You know the difference, right?
Not really. I can Google it though,
Well,
just
no,
to
you don't
figure
have to Google it. You got your coach here. Glamping is glamorous camping.
out.
And
Okay.
I'll show you one of the things that, let me see if I can find it. Just, I mean, since we're doing it and we're talking about it, I'll show you what one of the things that I'm actually working on. And it's very similar to what she has done in her side yard and in her backyard. So just give me a second here. Yeah, so this is one of the things that I'm doing actually out in BC. And her situation very similar. I'll show you what it looks like. So these are domes that are actually um, uh, made on Salt Spring Island out in BC by a company called Phoenix Domes. And she has some very similar structures. These are geodesic domes. They're year round. They're insulated.
Yeah.
And she has, I think now she has two in her side yard. No, one in her side yard and two in her backyard. So she has three glamping domes on a deck similar to what you see here with an outdoor kitchen. And they're incredibly popular. And she's booked up pretty solid for 8 months a year.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if we invented urban. I mean, glamping is a big thing. All right, I mean, there's plenty of glamorous camping sites. I mean, I should show you. You know, I'll show you one of the most successful. These guys are, what are they called? Whispering. Whoops, I screwed up.
How much do each of those tents cost usually?
I'll tell you in a second. So this is a group near Toronto called Whispering Springs. They don't use domes, they use tents like this, all right? And they're incredibly successful. These guys, Armin, are only open from sort of May until September. That's it. And they make so much money, it's insane.
Wow.
Uh, you can see their facilities in the back. These, so, when I was a kid, when I was, sort of Ario's age, I would go camping, but I would have a tent, I would sleep on a ground sheet, and it wasn't anything like this. But these are very, very nice. Let's see if I can get you some. Oh, look at here's their tree houses. So 2 years ago, they put these tree houses in, which are really popular. I'll go back. Can you see them okay?
Yep.
Now, I'm going to ask you guys, what do you think they get for a tree house per night?
Well, the way you phrase the question, I'm assuming it's quite a bit, maybe 100 to $150.
$650 a night.
Jesus, wow.
I mean, listen, it's Toronto, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Toronto has more money, it has American style money. But anyway, Ario, you got your calculator there?
Um, yeah,
Grab your phone and I'll make you do some work.
sure.
So they have 24 glamping sites, right? So they have 24 of them. They're open for 113 days. So 24 times 113 times $650 a night. What do you get?
We're getting 1.76 million.
Yeah. So they get about 2 million bucks a year from 24 sites. It's incredible. Now, the lady in Porto obviously doesn't make anywhere near that, but an extra 5,000 euros a month, which she's been averaging, has really made a difference to her. So there's, real estate is an incredible field. There's a lot more going on than most people realize. I mean, we've talked about it before, the three of us, that most people think real estate investing is you buy a townhouse and rent it out. So Armin, you have you have an agenda that will take about 8 hours, which is fine. I mean, it's challenging. Where do you want to start? I mean, I've spent the last hour and a bit preparing for this, and I have no idea where to start.
I think our main challenge right now is us, even if we were to find a deal, even if we were to find a good cap rate and all the financials look good on the surface, how
Right.
would we be able to analyze the contracts and see whether, and I know it's a vague question to ask, but based on your experience, is there something in particular where you found that, people have to watch out for besides the obvious thing, I guess, besides the obvious thing of the lease expiring, I don't know, in 5 months or so?
Yeah, well, I come at things a little bit differently when it comes to property, commercial property, than most people, and I'm not convinced that expiring leases are a problem. They can often be an opportunity.
Right.
And what I'm trying to teach you two guys is to understand real estate at a more fundamental level so that you're not overly concerned about vacancies. And the reason for that is it's an opportunity to put your own stamp on things. So many of the properties that I bought, commercial properties I bought, have actually had a lot of vacancies. And that's because I have confidence that I know something about leasing, commercial leasing, and then I can add more value than, say, the typical landlord, which I think has been proven to be true over many years. And the other thing, Armin, that helps you think this through a little bit is that if a property has a lot of vacancy, you should be able to negotiate a very good price.
Right.
And so it's a powerful, we've talked about negotiating strategies. It's very powerful. Oh my gosh, you've got a lot of vacancies. This is a big problem, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're asking $2 million for this property. I'm only going to give you 1.3, right? And if you don't, if you want to keep it, that's fine. Right now, I guess you guys know we're in a real estate recession, right?
Yeah.
And financing is tougher. And leasing is tougher. Everything about commercial real estate, in fact, residential real estate too, has become much more difficult. I mean, interest rates are anywhere from 6 or 7% to, if you're doing second mortgages, could be 15%, right? So life is much more difficult. So it is an opportunity to buy cheaper. I'll give you an example from my own experience. See if I could find it actually on Google Maps. Hang on a second. This would be interesting for you guys. Just give you a good sense of it. See if I could find it. Yeah, I found it. I'm amazing. I'll show you this. This is a plaza I bought. All right. It's on Merrickville Road in Ottawa. And, Merrickville Road is a pretty good commercial road, but this is the quote unquote bad part of Merrickville Road. Okay, it's right down near Carlington, which is a little bit tougher area than a little further south. So this is a plaza. It has about 6,500 square feet of retail space at grade, and it has about 6,500 square feet of basement space. And it had one lease. The lease was with a grocery store. So the grocery store had it was a small grocery store on the ground floor, and they had, their stock in the basement, and they had like a conveyor belt from the basement to the ground floor. And they were paying a very, very low rent. And believe it or not, they had a 25-year lease that was up within about 5 or 6 months. And the 5 men who owned this plaza were kind of panicking. After 25 years, they were a few months away from the lease expiring. And so they decided to sell this plaza. And they were asking not very much money for it, and I kind of beat them down a little bit. I bought this plaza, believe it or not, for $350,000.
Jesus. How many years ago was this?
Well, that's got to be at least a decade ago, but still, it was pretty cheap. And the men were older, I mean, I got to be careful because I'm getting older too, but they were older, and they were frightened really that it was going to be 100% empty. To me, it was an opportunity to buy something that I thought was a decent location, not an A location, but a B location, maybe even a C location, but a B or C location, and buy it cheap. So what I did was we bought this thing from them for $350,000, and I called up a friend of mine. He's an architect, and you can see this, I don't know what you call it, I guess an awning on it. That's completely fake. I added that, and I kicked out the tenant, the grocery store. I said, we're not renewing your lease. They were not paying very much rent. It was this much. I don't remember exactly the number. It was very low, and they offered me, like, after 25 years, they offered like a, I don't know, a 20% increase or something like that. It was ridiculous. So what I did instead was I called up an architect. We put this fake awning on it. And we divided, these columns, we added these columns, you could see them here.
Yeah.
Again, they're totally fake. And we divided it up into smaller spaces. Now, Armin and Ario, if you think it through, you're probably going to get a higher dollar per square foot for smaller spaces than larger spaces. Would you sort of agree with me on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see what we did. We put Circle K in here. And actually, this is going back 10 years ago or more. We had a company in here, a technology company in here from Montreal, and we had a couple of other uses. Today it's a little bit different. And then in the basement, which you can get to through this entrance here, we put in like a martial arts school, like a dojo. So our rent on this property went from whatever it was, X dollars, it went up by a factor of more than 6.
Wow.
So the plaza went from being valued at, when we bought it, for $350,000, it went, it became, was worth about 1.7 or 1.8 million. And that took about a year to do. All right. So, you know, yes, I mean, if you had now, if this thing had had another 10 years to run at that very low rate, I wouldn't have bought it. Well, first of all, they wouldn't have sold it. And second of all, I wouldn't have bought it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's what we did.
Yeah. So 2 questions. Why the fake awning?
I beg your pardon?
Why did you guys install the fake awning? Why did you go through the additional expense?
Yeah, okay. So one of the, that's a great question. One of the things that most people don't understand about real estate is about merchandising and branding, just like any other business.
Mhm.
If let's say you guys owned a duplex and I roll up as a prospective tenant and there's garbage in the front of the property, the grass is overgrown, the shrubs are overgrown, it looks like a complete dump, the likelihood of my renting the place is quite low, or the kind of tenants that you're going to attract, you know, will not be the kind that you really want.
Mhm.
If you just do one thing, and that is keep your properties neat and tidy and clean and painted and refreshed from time to time with no deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance is the bane of all building owners. If you do that and nothing else, you will attract better tenants paying higher rates.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And so I don't have a picture, at least not readily available, of what this thing looked like before we tarted it up. But we spent about $175,000 fixing it up. But again, our income went up by a factor of 6.
Mhm.
So probably we ended up with about $550,000 invested in a property that about a year after we bought it was appraised at 1.7 million. That's a good return.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good.
All right. So the key thing in commercial real estate for both of you is to look at a property and come up with your own list of highest and best uses for it.
Mhm.
Who are the right tenants for it? What is the right use, right? Who are the right users? And how do you create value for your tenants, not just for yourself?
Yeah.
And let's say you're running a Circle K, a convenience store. If your place looks like a dump, you're probably not going to get as many people coming in to buy ice cream and milk as you are if the place has a refresh and looks good. We are in the most brand conscious generation ever. Basically, you guys are that generation.
Yeah.
Let's say, Ario, you and I had the best sandwich shop in the world. And so we have Ario and Bruce's sandwich shop here. Great sandwiches. And it's just called the Ario and Bruce, sandwich shop. And a block away or a couple of doors away is a Subway. The number of people who will drive past our sandwich shop to go to Subway is incredible, even though Subway stuff is really not all that good, at least in my opinion.
Mhm.
So branding matters hugely, right? So that's why we did it, Armin.
Got it. Okay. Understood. The one thing me and Ario are struggling with right now is A, of course, finding deals, but B, we're trying to step away from residential and just, even though like the returns are, if you get creative enough with the cabins and with the glamping and all that, like, if you do all of that, it's nice, but we're trying to take
No,
a
I
more.
get that. I only showed you that because we were talking about Portugal. No, you
No,
guys,
yeah,
you
but
guys want to do the commercial thing. I don't disagree. commercial. And by the way, today is probably for the next year, the opportunities in commercial are going to be there, I think.
Yeah. So the main thing is we're struggling with finding deals.
Yeah, I
in,
know.
in Kingston and Toronto. Even I looked at Barrie. I looked at even Northern Ontario. Nothing's that attractive. Sellers are asking for a lot. At this at this point right now, what would you recommend us do? I mean, I even talked to Ario, and I thought we go through Geo Warehouse and we find the plazas that we're interested in that have good locations, send them a LOI, just see what happens. Maybe it sticks, you know. I don't know. I mean at this point we're trying to find something, but we can't. And so what would you recommend us do?
Well, first of all, I would say to you guys, you know, in this business, patience is a virtue.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think there's like some kind of expression, patience is a virtue, right? But in this business, it is. So you need to do two things, I think. One is to be patient and not jump to the first thing that shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And two, you need to become expert researchers.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, looking on Geo Warehouse and then pitching 100 plaza owners would be probably a lot of work and maybe not much return.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'll give you an example. I mean, there's a plaza that actually I built in Dunrobin that got, I sold it years ago, that got blown down by the tornado that hit Ottawa in 2018. And the guy I sold it to started to rebuild it. And I don't know if he got into a dispute with the insurance company or the builder or maybe all three, but it's been sitting there for almost 3 years, maybe even longer, vacant.
Is that the one that's boarded up?
It's the one that's boarded up. Did I show it to you?
Yeah, it's I drive by it every now and then, every 2-3 weeks, just because I do appraisals up there. So I just drive by it. It's on the main arterial road, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
It's on Dunrobin Road. Yeah, I built it. I mean, a long time ago, and you know, so I mean, you know, let's see if I can find it here. I think I've got it somewhere in here. Yeah, here it is here. And it was a fantastic, you know, I'm sorry that I sold it. I sold it because I got involved, as you know, with hockey, and we need some dollars. And so so this is a plaza that I built, I think it was in the 80s. And it was a wonderful little plaza. You go by it, right, Armin?
Yeah, I go by it pretty much every 2 weeks.
So back when I owned it, it had a pizza shop here, a Canada Post here, a meat and grocery store here, a Lickbo, you know, a liquor store and beer store here, and a chiropractor here. And you guys are going to laugh, but I built and owned the two houses that are right next to one here and one you can't see off the screen here. And guess what I put here? This is years ago. I put in a beach volleyball court.
Well,
now, why would I do that, Armin?
Attract people to go and so that they can go and shop.
That's right. So I went to Sam Musa. Sam Musa owned the pizzeria. It was called Sammy's. And I went to Sammy and said, I'm going to put in a beach volleyball court over here, and you're going to rent it from me. And he said, why the heck would I do that, Bruce? I said, because I have a theory that when you add, whether it's retail or industrial or any, really almost any commercial property, when you add something I call a play land, it increases, exactly as you said, Armin, increases the number of visits and visitors, the amount of interest in the property, and obviously people who are playing beach volleyball, I said, probably will drink more beer and eat more pizza. So Sam said, maybe. What's the rent? I said, well, I can guarantee you can afford the rent. He said, really? I said, yes. you're going to pay me 5 large pizzas a year. That was my rent. He burst out laughing. I mean, you know, what does it cost a pizza guy to give you 5? I have 5 kids, right? So I said 1 for each of my kids. But I had a percentage rent in that lease, right, with Sammy. And I don't remember whether it was 4 or 5 or 6%, but it was either 4 or 5 or 6%. And what do you think happened to his sales the next year that we put the beach volleyball court in?
Twice, 3 times, 4
No,
times?
it wasn't that good. It went up 8% the next year.
Oh.
And the year after that, once Sammy really got into it, he started organizing, you know, a mixed volleyball, you know, so if you're a young man, you want to meet a young woman, you know, you go and play volleyball. So he really got into it. The second year, his sales went up another 20%.
Wow.
That's quite significant. So anyway, this was a very successful plaza. And you can see here's the deli and bakery. That's the Lickbo and the beer store. And then there's the chiropractor. There's Canada Post, and there's the Sammy's Pizza. Yeah, and so I put in beach volleyball, but today I probably would put a pickleball court in. And then this is what happened in 2018.
Wow.
You know, it was completely destroyed. And this is what it looks like today.
Yeah.
So it's just sitting there.
Yeah. It's sad. And it looks, when I drove by it, it looked brand new.
Well, it is. I mean, they rebuilt it.
Yeah.
So something happened, and I went to see the local councillor, Clark Kelly, and just as a concerned citizen, because I still own property in Dunrobin, and I said, Councillor, this is the village center. It was the core of the village for 25 years, you know, and you know, the councillor can't order the owner to finish the building and tenant it, but you know, he or she, they have moral suasion. I said, you should talk to the owner and encourage him. I assume that there's some kind of dispute between the contractor, the insurance company, and the owner, but you know, there you go. But somebody should, you know, if the owner is not going to finish it, somebody should go buy this thing and finish it.
Yeah. All right.
I'm not saying it should be you, but that's the kind of deal that you have to look for. And one of the things that you'll do now, after a couple of coaching sessions with me, is you'll be more aware of the kinds of situations where there is promise. And I'll give you another example on this slide deck. Here's another one. This is owned by the Garlic King. I don't know if you know the Garlic King. He is probably one of the most successful shawarma shops, and he is in Orleans, right? I think that's St. Joseph Boulevard. So there is another thing, you know, that you might do, and it goes back to where you were talking about, what you were talking about a few minutes ago, Armin, where you might actually not offer to buy the plaza, but offer to add to it. And I'll show you what I'm thinking of, at least as far as the Garlic King is concerned. So this is the site here. So there's the building there. Can you see it?
Yeah.
And you notice it has a humongous parking lot over here, and it has a humongous backyard. So one of the things I actually talked to them about it is, what if they added maybe a residential apartment building here, you know, 4 or 5 story apartment building back here, and they put in a new retail pod here. But the owners are getting a little bit older, and they said, well, we're not real estate developers. So I said, why don't you do a land lease? And so somebody could come along, say Armin and Ario, and say to a retail plaza owner, look, you've got some extra space. Maybe we could build you know, a Tim Hortons in your parking lot, or I don't know, an A&W or something like that. And you would simply do a land lease. Now, the attractive nature of a land lease for you guys as developers is that you don't have to buy the land.
Yeah.
So I really like that kind of a strategy for retail. I've got a few more pictures. So these are the pictures I took of the site. So they do have some kind of a like outdoor eating area, but it's you know, in terms of merchandising and branding, it's terrible.
This
Uh,
is this is the one I know I've seen it. It's listed for two point something million, I think, if I'm
yeah,
not mistaken.
yeah. I didn't know it was listed, but if it's listed now, that's something you should look at, in my opinion. I'll tell you
Yeah.
why. Because when I looked at it for Dave, he's the guy, I guess, one of the owners. Um, uh, you know, it has exactly the same kind of upward lease potential as the Merrickville Road Plaza that I just showed you, which is that the Garlic King does not need all the space that it occupies it. You know, it's huge. You could introduce at least one or two new stores, similar to what I did on Merrickville Road.
Yeah.
And oh, here's a picture of Dave. He's obviously a Senators fan. And here's another picture of it. And so, you know, the Garlic King could be here, but you could have at least one more store here, if not two more.
Yeah.
And it has, I think, yeah, here's the parking lot, and it's got a billboard here, which is, you know, a good thing, I think, in ways, although I'd probably move it. But this is where I think you could put a new retail podium. Right? You understand what a retail pad is, right?
Yeah.
All right, so you could
Outside.
definitely do something with it. And then I've got some pictures inside. You know, obviously there's Senator's Wall, but this thing is huge, and it really is, you know, it's never more than maybe 20% full. I don't even think it gets to 20%.
Yeah.
So I actually did a sketch for them, which shows that they could have a new rental unit here. This one would be quite small, less than 800 square feet, but I think you'd get pretty good rent for that. And then the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow was, you know, to add additional square footage. As you know, most people, or a lot of retail clients, they want their own, you know, pad, right? They don't necessarily want to be part of a big building. They want to be on their own pad. You get higher rents for that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do when I look at for the highest and best use is I do examine, of course, their zoning, and you guys all obviously know that. And if you look at this zoning, permitted non-residential units uses in the arterial Main Street zoning. I mean, look at all the different things you could do. You can have studios, amusement center, I think bank. What else you got here? Daycare if you wanted. Hotel. That, by the way, is very interesting, and I'll come back to the hotel thing in a minute. Parking, personal service business like a hairdresser, athletic facility, restaurant, obviously, retail food store, school. There's a lot of demand for schools now. Technology, training center. I think I just repeated that, that's all.
Mhm.
So I think that actually has real potential.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to pay them $2 million for it.
Yeah. And sorry, it's not this one, it's the one next to it that was on sale, I believe. The Desi Food Market or whatever it's called, I think. It's on the right side of it.
Yeah, over here, I think.
Yeah, that one. That one was for sale for 2 million.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, to me, that one, I remember that. This one has way more value.
Yeah.
Oh, way more because of the land area, right?
Yeah.
And don't forget, you saw the big backyard it has. It's enormous. Mind you, there's a big slope back there.
Yeah.
But the building next to it over here has used the backyard, so they were able to do slope stability and obviously develop this building on the left-hand side here.
Yeah.
But if you bought something like this, then the first thing you would focus on is adding a pod right here.
Yeah.
You know, its own pad. And while we're talking about land leasing, just before we got going here, I did boot up for you I have a slide deck here, I think, about land leasing. I don't know if I can find it. Where was it? Yeah, here it is. So I'm just, because you asked in your agenda, Armin, about land leasing. I have, I pretty much have a slide deck on everything, as you probably have figured out by now. Let me tell you a story of what Bill Malhotra did. Bill Malhotra runs Claridge. You guys know Claridge, right?
Yeah.
Ario, you know Claridge? Yeah. So the NCC, the National Capital Commission, owns this property, which is right next to the Chateau Laurier, the corner of Rideau and Wellington, and whatever, Sussex, I guess. And Bill got this from the NCC for $0. You guys want to guess how he did that?
Land lease, I'm guessing, or?
Yeah, land lease. He did a land lease with the NCC for 50 years. And it's called the Metropolitan Center. It's at 700 Sussex, the corner of Sussex and Rideau. It's obviously right near the Byward Market. It was built in 2005. Claridge was the builder. Has 70 units. It has commercial at grade and then 70 units above. And what he did, Bill never ever actually paid any money whatsoever for this property. I mean, he's a smart man. What he did was he did a 50-year land lease, and then he got the NCC to agree that the land lease payments would not commence until the building was built and occupied. And then he put the land lease costs into the condo fees. So who do you think pays the land lease?
The homeowners or the condo owners?
The condo owners. So there's commercial condos and residential condos. There's commercial condos area as well as residential, right? The condo fees, back when I was looking at this, range from $620 to $2,100 a month. They include the land rent. It's 11 stories. So Bill's so clever. The NCC proudly announced that they got $5 million for the site back in the day, but they didn't. They got $5 million over 50 years, but they didn't include that in the press announcement. All right. So basically, here's a picture of Bill. I've known Bill for many, many years. He got the land for free.
Yeah.
So,
what happens to the condo owners then? If let's say the land lease ends at the 50-year mark, what happens to the people that paid for the condo and bought the condos?
So here's what one of my clients, a very wealthy young woman, wanted to buy one of these. And in fact, she did. And I raised exactly that question with her. I'll stop sharing my screen for a minute. And I said to her, she was only 35. I won't mention her name. She's quite well known, so that wouldn't be fair. But I said to her, you're 35, and this thing, you'll at 85, I mean, women are living into their 90s and hundreds now. I said, you might see the end of this land lease. But it's hard for a young woman who's 35 to ever imagine that she will actually be 85, right? Mm. And she said, well, whatever. But it is possible that the National Capital Commission at the end of the land lease says we're not renewing it, and they take back the property, and the 70 condominium owners are out of luck.
Wow.
Now, if I had done the land lease for Bill, I mean, he never asked me to help him, and he doesn't need any help from me. But if he had asked me, I would have put something else in the land lease to help the condo owners, and also to encourage the NCC to renew the lease. What I would have put in there, that in the event that the landlord or the land lessor, the NCC, decides not to renew the lease, they have to pay the depreciated costs of the building. So that at least the condo owners would get some kind of compensation at the end of the land lease. Yeah. But that's not in there.
Wow.
So that you could buy a $1.5 or $2.5 million condo in 50 years from now.
So the only person really benefited from this transaction was Mr. Malhotra, really, because the homeowners got
100%.
yeah.
100%. And the commercial condos are now owned by other people as well. I think Bill may have kept one or two of the commercial condos, but most of them got sold. And so, you know, I think your analysis, Armin, is right. The person who benefited the most was not the government of Canada and not the commercial or residential condo buyers. It was probably Bill.
Yeah. Wow.
But I mean, you know, as young developers, you've got to know this stuff, right? Because you listen to me. There's no reason why you can't do this too, you know. So we got one of the best development sites in Ottawa, steps from Parliament, and it's one of the best financing models I've ever seen, getting the land for free. And then I talked about this one. I'm not going to go through this again. That's the I just repeated these slides, but there's a couple others in here I wanted to show you. Yeah, I get there. So this is another land lease that I did. This is a church in Canada, and they had about 4.5 acres of land on March Road. And you probably go by this building every once in a while, Armin, as well. So if you next time you go up March Road, heading towards Dunrobin, there's this building in the front, which is a 4-story co-op. And in behind, you can't see it, but there's a bunch of townhouses, which I sort of show here. And I did the land lease for St. John's Anglican Church. And so what we did was, this land is leased for, I think, 65 years by a housing co-op. And the housing co-op, it's called Blue Heron Co-op, built this thing on a 65-year land lease with the church. And I think I've got the numbers on the next page here. So there are 64 apartments and 27 townhouses, and the land leases are very reasonable, $45 a month for the apartments and $75 for the townhouse. So the church gets about just under $5,000 a month, but there is an inflation clause. So over 65 years, it adds up. It's almost $10 million goes to St. John's Anglican Church, but the co-op paid nothing for the land, and they were able to build, you know, needed housing in Canada. You can rent a 2-bedroom apartment at Blue Heron Co-op, if any become available, for about $1,000 a month. If you go to a commercial landlord, it would be probably $2,500 to $3,000 a month now in Canada. So it benefited from, you know, people who need cheaper housing, and it benefited the church, and it also benefited the co-op.
Yeah. And
I put in that land lease that at the end, if the church does not renew, they have to pay the depreciated value of the improvements.
Mm-hmm.
So there'd be some compensation.
Yeah.
I'll show you something else that happened. Here, you know, the Canadian Tire Center, obviously. I put together a land assembly of 600 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a mistake, along with Rod Bryden back in the day, when we were selling off land to the Palladium Auto Park, which you know well, I'm sure. And when we're selling off land to other commercial uses and residential uses, frankly, in the area, we sold the land. Well, where do you think the money went? It went into hockey salaries, right? Our hockey players ate our lunch, right? I mean, when we bought this team 30 years ago, total player salaries in year one was $6.5 million. Today, it's about 85 million US dollars, which is probably 100 million Canadian dollars. So, you know, basically all the money that we made from the land sales went away. After listening to me for the last 15 minutes, what do you think I should have done instead?
Just
Land lease?
Beg your pardon?
You should do land lease?
100%. I should have leased the land underneath all of those buildings, right? So that we would have recurring committed monthly recurring revenues. The holy grail of business is not the occasional transaction. It's committed monthly recurring revenues, right? You guys know that.
Yeah.
So if I had land leases instead of the occasional sale, you know, you sell the land, you make a few $1 million or a few tens of millions of dollars. That's nice, but it goes away. If you have land leases, they're good for, you know, 60, 70, 80, 100 years. Who knows?
Yeah. Well,
I'll show you a couple more. This is 40 Wall Street in New York City. And guess who owns the land underneath 40 Wall Street? You're never going to guess.
Mr. Trump. Yeah.
Mr. Trump. This is why Mr. Trump today is fighting so hard to retain his right to engage in business in the state of New York. Because right now he's going through litigation, which if he's not successful in defending himself, he will lose all of his New York-based assets. And this is probably his single most valuable asset. The land underneath 40 Wall Street, owned by the Trump family, is leased for 4.65 million US dollars a year. And fairly recently, I think that went up to something like, I could have this wrong, I think it's now 11 or 12 million a year. That's just to rent the land underneath that tower.
Well,
And it's a triple net lease, which means that that's completely net to the family, to the Trump family. So I think it's over 10 million a year now. It might be 7 or 8 million, but it could be 10 or 11 million. I don't remember, but whatever it is, it's a big number. And that is just money in your pocket, and you have no obligations against it. You don't pay property taxes. You didn't have to pay for the building or anything else.
mm,
So another development strategy for you guys might be to find really good sites and not build anything, but to land lease it to developers who pay you money. And that was a part of Mr. Trump's strategy for a long time.
yeah.
I'll show you one more. This is Minto here in Ottawa. So Minto owns this piece of land where Movati is. This is in the south end of Ottawa, right? I think it's in Barhaven. Now, Armin, you may know why they do this. Why would Movati do a land lease instead of just buying the site from Minto and building their own building?
Depreciation.
Beg your pardon?
Yeah, the depreciation.
Yes, exactly. So any company that's publicly traded, Amazon, for example, doesn't want to own real estate because depreciation will depress their stock price. Right? So if you were the CEO of Amazon, you don't want to own your own real estate because depreciation reserves count against your earnings, even though it's a non-cash item, and so your stock is permanently depressed. So Movati is the same. Now, I'll show you what Minto did. So Minto owns this 4.58 acre site. And the fair market value of the land back when they did this, which was, I think, that's got to be, you know, probably in the last decade or so, was 7.1 million. They used a cap rate of 5.1%. Today, you'd probably be closer to 8%. So Movati has to pay Minto $362,000 a year, triple net land rent. Movati had to build a building. Movati pays the property taxes and utilities and everything else. And look at this. It's only a 30-year land lease. I couldn't believe that Minto could get a 30-year land lease. And by the way, Minto does not have to pay the depreciated value of the improvements at the end of this. Movati agreed. So it goes up at a fantastic rate, 362 in the first 5 years, almost 400 in the second 5 years. By the time you get to years 25 to 30, it's well over $500,000 a year. Oh, I apologize. There are 2 options to renew at the end of 30 years. So at the end of 50 years, Minto can take the land back.
Yeah.
Positives, from the point of view of Minto, excellent return, and they retain ownership. Negatives, they don't get the cash up front. And Minto did not ask nor receive a percentage rent. From the lessee's point of view, from Movati's point of view, they didn't have to put any cash up front. And really their members are paying the land rent, not Movati. Negatives, definitely going to be more costly over the long term. It is more difficult to finance the improvements. Obviously, they don't own or control the land, and there's no residual value in the structures. And this information was provided to me by John Kumba, who's one of the most respected. You would know John, I'm sure, Armin. He's one of the most respected appraisers in Ottawa.
Yeah, he's good. Interesting. So I guess if you were in our shoes, would you could just go scour through MLS and just negotiate it down and see who's willing to come down the most, and I guess whose numbers make sense the most?
Well, first of all, you have to figure out what your model is. And I really like the model that I think you're tending towards, which is buying retail plazas.
Yeah.
I think
we don't even know though. We want to look for a model that makes really good money and that's niche in the market that nobody else is doing. So I think
know
we talked
that.
about the brownfield sites, you know, like the contaminated sites, like that's something I personally was interested in. But at the same time, like I'm a little scared to delve into it just because I don't know anybody or anything, or I don't have the equipment to take care of it.
Right. Well, I'm not afraid of contaminated sites. I think I told you that I did some work for Canadian Tire in a land assembly. Remember that?
Yeah.
On Bank Street. So I'm not afraid of that, but I'm a little concerned that, you know, the two of you would get involved in something that complicated at this stage of your career. I'm not saying that you couldn't do it. I think I sent you something, you know, that I did in Kingston on the tannery site.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that yet.
I went through it. I think I went down to page 20 or 30, I believe.
Okay.
Because I did find a couple of sites and we found a couple of gas stations, and there's one on near the LRT site on Scott Street that we're looking at as well. It's a 200 by 100 site of mix of residential and parking lots. But the issue is that the water underneath is contaminated. So it's not the soil, it's the water. And like, how would you fix the water problem? I don't know. Like, do you build in a way where, you know, the foundation somehow covers the water and all the, you know, issues? So I talked to the seller, we went back and forth, but the seller didn't even know. So,
well, you can ask me because I have a pretty good handle on that. The answer is that water contamination is pretty much impossible to deal with.
okay.
And the reason for that is you could dewater the site, you know, you could pump it, and you could treat the water. But guess what? As soon as you stop pumping, water returns.
Yeah.
Right. So, and the problem is probably soil contamination, but it's leaching into the water. So you treat the water, and you know, and then the water comes back, and then over a period of a year, it absorbs whatever contaminants are already there.
Yeah.
One of my clients actually has a site that he owns in off of Barnsdale Road, which has exactly that kind of, it has volatile organic compounds in the water. The difference is that he is building mini storage and contractor yards and RV and boat parking on top of that land, so that the Ministry of Environment is not concerned with the contamination, right? You know, it's the same thing that I told you about Canadian Tire.
Yeah.
So Canadian Tire was building residential units on top of a contaminated site on Bank Street. Well, they wouldn't be allowed to do that because the vapors from the contamination can get into a structure, and you're sleeping there, and if one day you're married, you have little kids, they're sleeping there, and they can get really sick.
Yeah.
You still there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, something happened to my computer. I think I just kicked it and it went. You know, that Scott Street location, I assume that it would probably have some commercial at grade and then some residential above, right? Well, building any kind of residential above would be very difficult on a contaminated site. I think the Ministry of Environment would flat out say no.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
unfortunately, you probably could only build commercial there. And you know, that's why I'm concerned about you getting involved in this stuff, because dealing with the Ministry of Environment takes time, often measured in years.
Yeah.
For Canadian Tire, we were able to get a permit from the Ministry of Environment. And we got that in about 18 months, which from the ministry's point of view is like lightning quick.
Yeah.
Right. So for you know, basically beginners, with all due respect, I mean, you know a lot about real estate and you're going to know a lot more, but for beginners, it might take longer. Like Canadian Tire, Citro has a lot of pull in this province, right? Citro's Canadian Tire Real Estate Organization.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
what I would think, what I would prefer is if you could, and a brownfield site is fine. If you could find a brownfield site that sort of where it made sense just to build a, you know, commercial plaza, that's all. And you and Ario and your family would own that site. You would obviously clean it up or get the permit from the Ministry of Environment. And then you don't necessarily have to build it. You could just do what Minto does, which is land lease it to somebody who wants to put a, you know, plaza there.
Yeah.
Or you could build it. Be up to your choice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's that's the only thing that came to my mind, is because nobody's doing it, and that's where I wanted to be in, because like, you know, there's so many people going after contractor yards. There's so many people
I agree.
after, you know, even commercial retail plazas. There's so many people going after developments and flipping the paper and, like, you know, buying land, changing zoning and all that.
Right.
I just want to be in that little niche market that nobody's in. And
So
I just don't know what that is.
Can we think of another niche for you guys? Or is there another niche that you can think of?
Sure.
Like, what is it?
Besides the contaminated lots and the commercial plazas, not that nobody else is doing it, it's just that a lot of people that I know aren't doing it and they're scared. Besides that, nothing else comes to my mind.
Yeah, well, let me show you another model that I really like. I'll share my screen with you first. And again, I'm not saying this is the right model for you, but it's a lot easier than contaminated land, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if I showed you this one. I don't think so.
Shaddilac workplace.
Well, I have a client in Waterloo. His name is Shaddilac.
Okay.
He's a Palestinian and a really, really smart guy and very successful. And I like his first name, Shaddy. So we call this business Shaddilac, after Cadillac, right? And I'll show you what Shaddy did. So this is an industrial building in Waterloo.
Okay.
And it was for sale for a long time. And Shaddy brought it to my attention. It's 80,000 square feet, which is quite big for Waterloo, and for Ottawa that would be considered big. In Toronto, it would be considered, you know, a drop in the bucket. But here in Ottawa or Waterloo, it would be considered a fair sized project. So you can see it here. It's a long, skinny building. It's 80,000 square feet. And as soon as I saw it, I said, I really like this shed, because he'd wanted it to buy it for a long time, but he wasn't sure if he could. And guess what? It also has contamination.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the site is contaminated. You know, it's right next to a creek here, and there's been all kinds of industrial uses here probably for the last 150 years, right? So there's some contamination on the site, but I really liked it. And the reason it was for sale really cheap, when I say cheap, I mean it was unbelievable. I'll tell you in a moment what it cost. So it only has, I think, 11-foot 2-inch ceiling height, which for industrial space is the kiss of death. Right? Most industrial users want 22 to 24 feet minimum. And most of them today actually want 30 feet, and Amazon wants 60 feet. The other thing that was a killer for this thing is it has columns right down the middle of it. You can see here.
Yeah.
So industrial users, you know, the big guys like Wayfair and Amazon and others, they want anywhere from 30 to 60-foot ceiling height. They want column free. This is completely useless to them. So Shaddy said he wants to buy it, but he wasn't sure what he could do with it. It was super cheap. And I said, it is set up perfectly for small workshops. And that's a model you guys know I really like. So there's 1 million people out there. Oh, there's probably in North America, there's probably 30 million people who have small side hustles, right? Who
Yeah.
want a little workshop. So this is what Shaddy did. He bought this thing, and I'll show you the numbers in a minute. He bought this thing, and this was him sketching out the plan. And the idea was it was perfectly set up for like 800 square foot workshops, right? I mean, between those columns that you saw, you could just chop it up like that.
Right.
And within a week or two of buying it, he was in there with his crew, putting up metal studs and making these small workshops. And some of them might be 400 square feet, but I think most of them were 800 or 1200.
Okay.
And it's hard to believe he bought an 80,000 square foot building for $1.2 million. That's $15 per square foot. You cannot build a doghouse for that. You cannot. You cannot. I trust me, if you go out and buy some, you know, some marine plywood and you put together a doghouse, it'll be a lot more than 15 bucks a square foot. He spent about $8,800, you know, fire separating each of the workshops. He had some soft costs, he had some financing fees, he paid some interest. He ended up with about $2.3 million in this building.
Mm.
His net operating income, I think 3 years in, because he rented them all, was about 1.2 million.
Holy moly.
Yeah, it was like a 50% cap rate. And I usually don't show this to people because it's kind of hard to believe.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's been, I mean, you know, he's a very smart guy, but this has been a really good investment for him. And he got it reappraised based on income. And he took out, I think, close to the end of his third year, about $7 million in tax-free cash.
Because there's a ton of like lots, even near Perth. Like there was a former Rona, I think, near Perth that's on sale for $1 million next to the 3M factory, and that's like a huge site. Lots of area, big square footage, but you know it's probably a lot of money to fix and renovate it.
Well, what you would do with that though is you would do the same thing that Shaddy did. You just put in a bazillion small workshops. You know,
So
I have a property where I have small workshops, and it's not as big as Shaddy's, but it's very successful.
Okay.
So I have a question in regard to contaminated land. What are like some like so to my understanding you can't really build on contaminated land, right? But as we saw like here, Shaggy was his name?
Shaddy
Shaddy, right. He like separated the big space into smaller spaces. So I guess my question is, what is exactly building versus, I guess, not building? What can you do on a contaminated lot, and what can you not do?
So on a contaminated site, like Canadian Tire, I put together that land assembly. They have a huge store on it. I'll see if I can show it to you. Just give me 1 second here. Yeah, here it is. So, Ariel, this is Canadian Tire on Bank Street here, right? So there's oh no, that's not the right one. Sorry, it's in closer. Maybe, gosh, I hope I can find it. Nah, hell. Where is it now? Well, I'm not going to be able to easily find it, and I don't want to waste your time, guys. Sorry about that. But what happened was, here's Bank Street, and I think it's on a corner of Bank and Heron, and there's a rail siding over here, and the contamination went all up and down the rail siding. So we did a deal with the Ministry of Environment. As long as we didn't disturb the pile of, excuse my language, but pile of shit that was left along the rail siding, and we only put a paving down and parking on that side of the property, and put the store on the other side of the property closer to Bank Street, we were allowed to build. So you can build commercial and industrial on a contaminated site as long as you know what you're doing and you know where the contamination is, which means you need to do a phase two. A phase two is where a phase one environmental study is where you walk the property and you get a sense of it. A phase two is obviously where you go and you sample the soil and you sample the water, and you get a pretty good, you actually have a drilling rig that goes and does the soil samples and the water samples, and you get a pretty good idea of where the problem is and how to contain it. So you can build, but you can't build residential on it.
Okay. So as long as it's not residential, you can build something on there? Is that my understanding?
The answer is probably. In other words, you can't give a definitive answer until you actually get, something from the Ministry of Environment after you've done your homework. It's a process.
So it's mostly with the Ministry of Environment you have to deal with then. Like you have to
I think it's
come
almost
to an agreement.
exclusively, yeah.
Okay.
Like, can you even like do like coffee shops, even like things that are like food related as well? Mostly.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Canadian Tire, I don't know if they're like Price Club, but yeah, I think you probably have food services too, yeah.
So the ministry doesn't mind, like as long as people are not living there,
Yeah,
breathing.
exactly. And they're particularly concerned about children, right? Like if you guys, I'm sure you guys will be good fathers. You do not want, children who are going through very rapid cell division. If they're in a polluted environment, I mean, somebody my age would probably not be affected because my cell division is much slower. Somebody your age area could be affected, and certainly somebody who's 1, 2, 3, 4 years of age is very vulnerable to that. So there, and that's an absolute no-go.
Yeah.
So what about a building that's already built? So like just like a Shaddy here, and you can do modifications in the building.
Yeah,
and no problem.
he got himself a building permit, and like a week after he was closing, as I said, he was in there dividing it up as fast as he could build those things. He could rent them. It was a really great experience. I mean, think about it, Ariel. I bet you have some friends. I've asked you this before, I think, who have side hustles, right?
Yeah.
I bet you if you asked a few of your friends, did I show you what one of my daughters does with her fashion design business?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Yeah, well, if you like girls, you'll like this.
That was a Victoria's Secret type stuff.
What's that?
Is it the Victoria's Secret type stuff, or is it like?
Oh yeah, kind of. A little bit
There,
different.
yeah.
But I'll show you what she does, Ariel and Armin. She's very successful, and this is her side hustle. And so her site is proofcanada.ca, and she designs and fabricates, clothing for fashion-forward women, mostly in the United States and mostly in California and Michigan. And I mean, she sells just an incredible number of these garments in the States and some in Canada, but mostly in the States. And When she does her photo shoots, my youngest son volunteers to help. You can imagine why. Right, but this is you know, I mean, Jessica is an example of you know, a very successful fashion designer, fabricator, merchandiser, brander, whatever. And these people all need workshops, right? And the workshops can be as small as 200 square feet. They can be 400, 800, 1,200 square feet. But let me ask you this, Ario, think it through for a moment. Let's say you own Shaddy's building. It's 80,000 square feet.
Right.
You have one tenant paying you, say, $10 or $11 per square foot per year, triple net. Or you have 100, 800 square foot tenants paying you on average about $18 to $20 a square foot triple net.
Right.
Which is better?
Well, I would assume the one with more, because when you break it down to smaller, you can ask for more.
Exactly. But there's
but
another
yeah.
reason why I think it's better. And by the way, your bank may not agree with that. Armin
Fair
would
enough,
know
yeah.
this. Your bank may not agree. The bank might say, "Whoa, no, having one tenant, you know, it's simple. You've got a guaranteed, you know, amount every month, even if it is a lower rate." I don't agree with that. If you have 100 small tenants and one of them leaves, your vacancy rate has gone from 0 to 1%.
Right.
Let's say 4 of them leave. Your vacancy rate has gone from 100%, 0 to 4%. But if that tenant that has the entire building goes bankrupt or leaves, you've gone from 100% vacancy occupancy to 100% vacant.
Right.
To me, it's much riskier, but the bank doesn't really like that, right? They think that one tenant is a better risk for them as your lender. But you know, so you know, there are ways to get around that. Armin, do you know how?
Yeah, I guess my question was more about the contamination restrictions.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah, okay.
I got that, but I wanted you to understand in that I call it the Shaddilac model, why I think it is better, because A, you're making a lot more cash flow, and B, you're not as vulnerable to somebody going out of business or vacating the premises. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense, yeah.
All right.
Speaking
So
of
Armin, do you know
listers-
the workaround with the lenders? You know how to do that?
For them to basically accept a higher lease payment, but per unit basis, what basically Shaddy does essentially.
So one, if your lender accepts the appraisal, that's fine. But if the lender gets upset and says, "Well, I don't like that.
Yeah.
You've got too many leases. I don't really understand what the hell you're doing."
Yeah.
A lot of banks and lenders they're very conservative. You know that, and they're even more conservative today than they were 2 years ago. So one of the workarounds is
Sign a contract with another company and the company leases it out. Yeah. Like you create a property management, whatever.
When does 1 + 1 = 3?
Synergy.
So I'll send you that afterwards. I actually wrote an article. Sorry, you guys have got to read all this stuff, but you're going to have to anyway. But listen to this, Armin. You're on the right track. So if you did a Shaddy, he didn't have to do this. His lender said, "Oh, your cash flow is great. I'm accepting the appraisal," and he took out $7 million tax free. But and it still cash flows, by the way. So what you can do, and you might consider doing it, is you can do exactly what you said. You can create your own company. I've done it. So you've got your real estate company, which owns this industrial building, and you create an operating company. And the operating company enters into a lease with the real estate company, and say for whatever the fair market value lease rate is. So maybe it's $11 per square foot triple net. Okay. And then the operating company has the right to sublet to all these little side hustles. Okay. So the operating company is leasing the space out at $18, $20, $22 triple net to these guys, maybe a little bit more than that. I think Shaddy has some that are even higher.
Yeah.
And so what you've done is quite legally, you've moved some of the profits from your real estate company into your operating company. And if you have a holding company up here, you're allowed to dividend to the holding company from both of the real estate company and the operating company, tax-free dividends to the holding company. And then you and your family own the holding company, and you can do all kinds of cool stuff to get to be tax efficient and to get money into the hands of your shareholders at this level.
Yeah.
But something else will happen over time. That operating company will have its own balance sheet, maybe its own management. It will have its own financial statements. And so eventually you can have your real estate company doing mortgage financing, and the operating company can have credit facilities with Business Development Bank or Royal Bank of Canada or whomever. Yeah. And at some point, if you wanted to, you could sell the operating company because it's profitable, sell it and keep the real estate. Or you could sell the real estate and keep the operating company, or sell both separately. Yeah. That's why I say 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So that's one way of creating additional value. I don't want to run out of time. We got lots of time, but I wanted to show you a deal points memo because you asked Armin, one of your questions was how to tie up a site. All right.
Yeah.
So, I've been doing a lot of this stuff, in Canada, the United States, some overseas, but mostly Canada, the United States. So this is a deal points memo that I put together with a client of mine to purchase a property in Texas. Okay. And guess what it's for? It's for, he is going to take this existing building and divide it up into small workshops and combine it with contractor yards. There's a lot of demand for this in Texas. All right. So the deal points memo is just what it sounds like. It's just a memo. And what I tend to do, most realtors don't do this, but I do, is I put together, and this is what I want you and Ario to do. If you find something you actually want to make an offer, I want you to draft up a deal points memo for me to review. And then we'll talk to your realtor. Do you have a realtor, Armin?
I guess that would be me, myself, and I.
Yeah, you would act for yourself. So you would draft excuse me. That makes a lot of sense. You would draft up a deal points memo. You'd share it with me first. I'd do the second draft, and then you would talk to the seller's agent and say, look, I could put in an agreement of purchase and sale, but that takes a lot of work and time. What I wanted to do first, if it's, a lot of the listing agents will accept it, some will not, but yes, I'm going to put together just the points that I think make sense. If we can agree on that, then you'll draft up an offer. If not, well, just go on to the next one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so the offer price on this property was $651,500. There was a commission payable by the seller to the listing agent, and the commission paid by the seller to the buyer agent was $0. My client wanted to pay his agent himself. He didn't want anybody in multiple rep, or he didn't want his agent to be indebted in any way to the seller. So $0. This was for a man by the name of Chris O'Connell. He's actually based in Miami. The realtor for the seller was John McDaniel. I don't know who the attorneys are. We didn't have it at the time. The status of the buyer, he's an American citizen residing in Miami. Applicable taxes, if any, or in addition to the purchase price. This was the subject property. Later on, we put in the legal description. Then we put in the buyer conditions, financing. He doesn't really need a financing condition, but it's in there anyway. economic feasibility. Do you ever put that in your agreements, Armin?
No.
That's
Never.
very
never.
important. I'll send you this, but it's in confidence, okay?
Okay.
You can't share it with anybody else.
No problem.
All right. So economic feasibility is a very, very important condition for what you're doing. Because let's say you put in a financing condition and you got an offer of financing and they're going to charge you like credit card rates, 18% or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
Well, the seller could say, well, you got an offer of financing. Your financing condition, you must waive it or give us notice of fulfillment. Well, wait a second, the financing wasn't acceptable, right, to you.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that dispute. Economic feasibility trumps that. So if your financing is too expensive, the project's not economically feasible, you can get out of the deal.
Okay.
All right. But there's something else. The second part of that's really important. That part of economic feasibility is a market study. And the best kind of market study that you can do is advertising while it's under agreement of purchase and sale, but still conditional, where you can advertise on Kijiji, or in the United States would be Craigslist or LoopNet or Crexy or one of those guys, where you can advertise the property for lease and see what kind of response you get. So you can say, we're considering buying this property. We have some workshops available, some contractor yards available, or some retail space available. But if that's not in the agreement of purchase and sale, you cannot advertise a property you're purchasing. You cannot market that property without the permission of the seller. Okay, you would know that as a realtor.
Yeah.
Right. So you ask for that and you get it right up front in the agreement of purchase and sale. And then building inspection, legal review of all documents, deliveries, a review of the zoning and ordinance provisions, and an environmental report. When you're buying commercial property, you have to have at a minimum a phase 1 environmental study. You have to have that. If you're buying a bungalow in Barrhaven, you don't need that, but any sort of commercial property, your lender will want that and you will want that. All right. With commercial property, typically your conditions are much longer, Armin, than they would be for buying a bungalow in Barrhaven. In this case, 45 calendar days. Closing date was 15 business days after waiver or fulfillment of all conditions. Title search was 5 business days prior to completion. Here, again, my client wanted vacant possession of the land and the building because he's going to divide it up into workshops. He doesn't want to assume any leases. Then obviously you know how to do deposits. Balance of the purchase price was in cash. This is important as well. I put this right in an agreement of purchase and sale. Seller hereby appoints buyer as agent for the purposes of these investigations and applications. In addition, seller agrees to allow buyer or buyer's agent to enter upon subject property for the purpose of fulfilling conditions or making any such investigation, provided the buyer shall reinstate the property close to prior condition. And the reason I put that in an agreement of purchase and sale is if you go back after you sign an agreement of purchase and sale and try and get their permission to do the economic feasibility, the marketing, or these investigations, they'll often say no.
Mm-hmm.
This one here is again one of the important clauses I put in. Seller agrees not to oppose either directly or indirectly any zoning, site plan, building permit, or other municipal, provincial, or it should say state, or regulatory applications that the buyer may make, and this warranty shall survive completion. The reason that's in there is sometimes you get seller's remorse, and they oppose you rezoning it or severing it or doing something with it. And they're not allowed to do that or to get their brother-in-law to do it. So they can't oppose you either directly or indirectly. You probably have used this clause here, Armin?
Yep. It's assignment. Yeah.
Yeah. And because, you can put, in this case, Chris put it in his own personal name, and then He's gonna close this, I think, in January. He'll put it in a company name. This is important. No new leases or other agreements. After waiver of fulfillment of all conditions, seller agrees not to enter into any new leases or property management or maintenance and repair agreements. And they're going to deliver vacant possession. Environmental, you probably see this in a lot of your agreements. Seller represents and warrants to the best of the seller's knowledge and belief that during the period of his ownership of the property, that the lands are environmentally clean or within the range specified by government authorities, and that he's respected all environmental laws. Chattels, we asked all the chattels as of the date of this offer to be included, including a 2-ton trolley crane and 2-ton bridge crane in working order on day of completion. So you have to make a list, obviously, of the chattels in commercial, because you know they could sell those things before closing, and I don't have to tell you what it costs to put a 2-ton trolley crane and 2-ton bridge crane in. That's tens and tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Deliveries, the fixtures excluded, none. Deliveries, property taxes and assessments, copies of any letters, reports, designs, plans, and correspondence. A survey of building plans, including as-builts. Do you know what as-builts are?
As if built, I'm guessing.
So virtually every property, whether it's a house or commercial, is constructed and they make changes on site. In other words, you've got the plans that the architect did and the city approved, but when you're actually building just about anything, site conditions sometimes come up and you have to make changes. So getting the original drawings of a commercial building is useful, but the as-built will actually show all the changes that were made on site. They're usually outlined in red.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's important, because if you're dividing up an industrial building into workshops and they move the plumbing, and you don't know that, you could end up with a design that's unusable. Copies of any warranties and guarantees, environmental assessments if they have them. And I always ask for an appraisal report as well, if they have it. So do they have an appraisal report? Do they have a building inspection report? Do they have a utility inspection and connections report? I ask for that.
Yeah.
And then this thing is interesting here. This sometimes I get pushback on this, but this I also put in here. Well, this deal points memo is not legally binding on either buyer or seller. It expresses the intent of the parties. And all parties agree to make best efforts to conclude a binding agreement of purchase and sale within 10 business days of execution of this memo. Further, during this best efforts period, all parties agree to negotiate exclusively with each other, and the seller agrees not to entertain other offers on the subject property, and the buyer agrees not to make an offer on another industrial property in the state of Texas during this 10-day period. So it's pretty simple. And if you can get somebody to agree to that, a seller and a seller's agent, then you basically know you're pretty sure you're going to get a deal.
Yeah. Okay. Is this
So
almost
you
like
could do 20 of those, or I'm exaggerating. You could probably do 5 or 10 of those at the time it would take you to do one agreement of purchase and sale.
Yeah. So is this like a notice of intent almost kind of similar thing? Okay. So why not just send a notice of intent? What's the difference between these two?
I think you could call it, I call it a deal points memo. You could call it notice of intent, letter of intent, anything you want to. I mean, you can come up with a better name. I don't care, but it just short circuits everything. And it's not legally binding, but it expresses the intent of the parties. But one aspect is legally binding, and that is that they agree for 10 or 15 business days to exclusively negotiate. Good, right? That is binding on them. So they can't, otherwise they could use your deal points memo to leverage somebody else to pay more.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
All right. All right. What's next on our list?
I think, well, we went over the contracts. It's just I think we should go over like analyzing contracts when we actually do have a contract, because right now we don't have anything anyway, so there's no point on I don't know, up to you, but maybe Ario can chime in as well. I don't know what he wants to do if there's additional questions he has.
Okay, let's see here.
Well, you're thinking, Armin, I'm sorry, Ariel, there was one other thing that, well, there was a bunch more things. I mean, I got pages of notes that after what you sent me. There's something that I think you asked about, which was how to negotiate a deal, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I call that bridging the price gap. All right.
Yeah.
And you know, like if you made an offer on a property and you offer 1.2 or 1.3 million and they're at 2 million, that's a big gap, right? Do you know what anchor pricing is?
No, I don't know. No.
It's a very powerful method of bridging the price gap. Here's what it is. Price anchoring refers to the practice of establishing a price point which customers can refer to when making decisions. Every time you see a discount with 100 scratched out at 75, the 100 is the price anchor and the sale price is $75, right? So what I do when I'm talking to, say, a seller or a seller's agent on behalf of a buyer, in this case, you're asking on your own behalf, Armin, and say, look, you guys, you know, want 2 million for this, and I really think the property's worth 800,000. I apologize. I know you think it's worth 2 million, but I really think it's 800,000. What is the anchor price in that sentence?
800,000.
Exactly. And so when you come back and you say, but I'm willing to offer 1.2 million, the seller kind of goes, oh, phew, I thought he was going to offer me 800.
Hmm.
It's very, very, very strong, right? Very strong. I have a residential example here. Here's an example of anchor pricing. Say you want to get $1,280 for a one-bedroom apartment, but the base rate is $985, $135 for utilities, $45 for parking, and $115 for a tech package, you know, internet. So
Yeah.
you advertise it as a one-bedroom apartment for $985, and somewhere else in the ad, so it's not a bait and switch, you say, oh, by the way, you also have to budget $135 for utilities, $45 for parking, and $115. But nowhere in the ad do you add it up to $1,280. It's all there.
Yeah.
And you'd be amazed at how many people, when they ask, what are you paying for your apartment, will say $985. That's an example of anchor pricing.
Okay.
I'll give you another example. This is one of my buildings in Belleville, and the appraiser was talking to me about the building before they appraised it, and you know, I said, you know, I think the value of this building is at least $6.1 million. He was thinking 4.1. So my anchor price in his mind when I was negotiating the appraisal was 6.1 million. And I ended up getting an appraisal at 5. That's a big difference from 4.1 to 5. All I did was I threw out that $6.1 million and it probably changed his end appraisal by $900,000. All right. So these are all methods that work. And you're a young man, you will find 1,000 opportunities by the time you're my age where you'll deploy this kind of stuff. Here's one for the realtor world. If somebody asks you, Armin, what's your commission if you're taking a listing? A dumb realtor says, well, I want 5.5% or 5%. But a smart realtor says, well, it's going to cost you 3% for Armin. And if an outside broker's involved, it's going to cost you another 2.5%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I won't go through that one. Let's see, whatever. All right, we know what a BATNA is, right? You guys are professionals on this, right? Best alternative to negotiated agreement, right? Right. So
Like having a plan B almost.
what's that?
Almost having a plan B that's better than plan A, but you know.
Yeah, exactly. But every negotiation I go into, including with tenants, I always have a BATNA, right? A best alternative to negotiate agreement. That if you don't want the space at this price, I'm okay with that. I've got some other ideas, right? On the space. So I'll give you an example. I had, and you asked this question, Armin, in your list of things that you were interested in, is what do you do when a tenant thinks he has you over a barrel? And that actually happened to me. I had a building, it was about 180,000 square feet, which is a fair size for Ottawa. And Nortel was in 100,000 square feet of that space. So it wasn't 100%, but it was about, you know, what is it, about 60%, I guess. And they felt they had me over a barrel. I don't like that. And when the lease came up for renewal, Nortel said, well, you know, we're paying, I don't know, they were paying, I think back then, $18 per square foot triple net for their space. We're going to renew the lease with you at 13. I said, no, I want 20. And they said, no, we're Nortel, you know, I mean, that's a big company back in the day. No, we're only offering 13. Take it or leave it. Never use that kind of language in negotiating. That is a terrible idea. All right. So I told Nortel, well, I'm going to leave it then. And at the end of 8 months, which was all they had left on their lease, you'll have to move out. Nortel had spent over $2 million just on their communications gear in that building. That was their own cost and fit up.
Wow.
So my best alternative to negotiate agreement was I already wanted to break up the space into small mini offices. You know what mini offices are, right? It's like co-working space. And that's what we did. We had 2 floors in this tower downtown, Heritage Place, floors 9 and 10 that we developed into co-working space or mini offices. And in this building, we had another floor where we did that. And we ended up, and you can see these buildings here. These are some of the buildings. This is where Nortel was. We divided the space up into much smaller spaces. And we did exactly the same thing I mentioned earlier. We went from, I think we're getting $18. We ended up at close to $60 per square foot.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was the best alternative to negotiate agreement. Now, if Nortel had given me $20 or $22, I would have accepted another 3-year extension because there's costs involved in dividing up the space. Yeah. But that's where I learned the 1 + 1 = 3 strategy. So thinking about your alternative before you go into a negotiation is really important. And understanding things like the highest and best use is really important.
Yeah.
Okay, I've done all of this. Okay, so here's another kind of anchor pricing. This is in a commercial setting. I'll go back here. So when we were doing this mini office, and by the way, we were the largest provider of mini offices in Eastern Ontario. We ended up with, I think, 164 mini offices, and they were between 92 and 94 or 96% occupied for decades. And occasionally we went over 100% occupancy. We had so much demand, we ended up with library kiosks in the hallway where people could sort of hang out while they were waiting for a mini office.
Wow.
Ario, mini office is an office that's fully furnished and fully functional, and you can show up, and within an hour you can be set up in business. Apple Computer started in our mini offices in Ottawa. They rented 2 offices from us, and they grew to quite a fair size, i.e. the most valuable company on the planet. Right? So when it comes to pricing, I mentioned residential, but here, this is mini offices. We had a competitor, it was Minto actually. They had the Bradson Center, and we were both at $900 a month plus HST for our mini offices. Bradson and Minto were at $980, and so were we. But that's not how I advertised it. What I did was I advertised it as $785 a month, which is your base rent, and $195, which I called a facilities charge. And it amounts to the same amount that Minto was charging, but the facilities charge, I would explain to people, pays for your furniture, your utilities, your property taxes, reception, administration, mail handling, boardroom space, internet, Wi-Fi, cleaning, et cetera, et cetera. And what was really funny, Armin and Ario, is the number of our tenants, when they were asked, just similar to the residential thing, what are you paying for your mini office, would say $785. And the people over in Minto's building, which was literally across the street from us, would say they were paying $980. All right, so that's, I'll see if I've got a few other pointers for you. Here's another one that I think is actually worthwhile talking about. Yeah, this is worthwhile stopping for a minute on this one. When I do commercial leasing and residential leasing, people are often asking for, can I have a month's free rent? Can I have a half a month's free rent? On a mini office, if it's $1,000 a month and you give them a month's free rent, that's $1,000 you just gave away.
Yeah.
What I have found is that offering people a premium, it's called a premium, is more powerful and much more cost effective. For example, we might offer somebody a free Costco membership. They go, oh, that's so nice of you, Bruce. Now that costs today about $120, but it doesn't cost you $1,000.
Yeah.
And every time they pull their membership card out at Costco, they think, oh, isn't Armin a great guy? Isn't Ario a great guy? They bought me this membership. People will value a premium like that more than they will value $1,000 off a month's free rent.
Wow.
It's weird, but true. And in commercial leasing, it works just as well. I mean, people are people, right? They're very impressionable. You know, some of the things that we've done to entice residential tenants is we give them a nice wall garden or something on their balcony. Or we give them, I don't know, a $50 gift certificate for food and beverage. This one I think is particularly relevant. And I'll just stop sharing again for a moment, and then we'll go on to something else. So a client of mine had a really nice co-working space downtown Ottawa, and for some reason or other, she just was struggling to rent it. I was perplexed because it was really nice, and she kept on offering lowering the rent, and she offered 1 month's free rent, 2 months free rent. And so I told her to take all of her advertising down, Kijiji, MLS, etc. And I said, what I'd like you to do is think about a premium. It turns out that she owned a pub 2 blocks away, like literally on Bank Street. So her co-working space was off Bank Street, but the pub was literally 2 blocks away. So she would give, she offered to give clients a $50 coupon for food. You can't provide coupons for beer. That's illegal in Ontario. But you can provide $50 coupons for food. And she offered those coupons and she filled up her mini offices within a few months. Wow. That $50 of free food at her pub 2 blocks. Now it didn't cost her $50 because she has a margin on food of some sort.
Yeah.
So these premiums are very, very powerful. So there's many, many, many different ways to bridge the price gap, if you're putting in an offer. Some of the things that we do, that you probably already have done, is if you're offering, say, 1.2 million on a property and they want $2 million, right? Well, that's a big gap, as I said. What you can offer, you can say, well, I'll increase it to $1.5 million, but you've got to give me a $300,000 seller take-back mortgage at 0% interest for 3 years.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of things you can do. with that. And that $300,000 seller take back mortgage has to be postponable to a first mortgage. So you get more financing and you get it much cheaper than you could get today.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're doing a deal points memo, when you find something that you're interested in, Armin, and you do your first deal points memo, we'll think through the financing even before you make the offer. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll do it together.
All right. Is there like templates that we could get from you for like either the leases or the deal points memo or anything for that matter, so that at least we can get used to the structure and how to do it?
Yeah.
Because I've never done commercial in my life. I have no idea. I mean, I could go through the Ario forums or whatever, but I'm guessing that's not what people
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do
I'm
that.
guessing
No,
that's not what people do in the business. So
no. You know, I'm going to send you the 1 + 1 = 3 memo. I'm going to send you another deal points memo, the one we went through.
Mhm.
I'll send you. I'll see what I can find. I'm sure I have many triple net leases on my computer. I'll send you that as well afterwards, so you can have them. All right.
Yeah.
But there was something else that you were asking. You just mentioned, go back again to what you just asked me. There was something else in there that I missed.
That I asked about the templates for
Yeah,
leases and deal points memo and the agreement of purchase and sale, I guess, for commercial.
yeah. So the agreement of purchase and sale, you don't have to worry about that right now.
Yeah.
What you know, I'll send you stuff on how to write up triple net leases. I'll send you a form as well. I'll send you the deal points memo that we went through. That's enough for now. Like, you know,
Yeah.
the thing that I need you guys to work on over Christmas and into the New Year's, because I'm leaving, as you know, tomorrow for Australia, so I won't be available until the New Year. But the thing I really need you to think through is, you know, what your business model is going to be. You know, you could do the industrial thing, you could do the land leasing thing, you could do the retail plaza, you could do the you know, the brownfield site. I mean,
Yeah.
there's probably a few other things that might make sense, but let's stick with the commercial because I think you're on the right track there. To me, probably the best model that I can think of is probably the small workshop model. You know, let's find you guys a building that no one else wants, which is what Shaddy did, which is what I did, which is what many other people I've coached. Did I show you what some of my clients did on Akins Road in Canada?
No, I don't
I
think
should
so.
show you that before we run out of time. But
So we're basically doing like co-working spaces, except that it's not an office. It's in an industrial, so it could be like garages, it could be workshops, it could be
100%.
whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. I just think that's the model for you guys, and it could be a combination of you know, of, like you said, a co-working space and side hustles, small workshops. I mean, all of that does fit together. Let me see if I could find Akins Road.
What would you say is like an acceptable size, like on average, if you want to look for something like that?
Yeah, I would say, you know, to start with, I mean, you guys could start with a building as small as 4,000 square feet. You know, I don't think there's any magic to it, Ariel, that, you know, I mean, some of these smaller buildings are doing just fantastically well. I mean, it doesn't, in other words, it does not have to be, it does not have to be, you know, 80,000 square feet. Let me see if I can show you. Oh, I got it here. Yeah, there we go.
There's one in Münster for 600K, and it's been on the market for quite a while.
Yeah, you're speaking my language now. Exactly. But Armin, you have to put together a deal points memo, get the listing. I mean, if you're going to do something with it, and send it to me before you make an offer.
Yeah. Let's go see it first. Let
Yeah,
me
well, go see
it.
it. But you know, and listen, because I'm going to be in Australia. But take plenty of pictures, right? But you're speaking my language. So let me show you what clients of mine did on Akins Road in Canada. Right. So this is Canada. This is Akins Road, and this is another, this is an 18,000 square foot warehouse. And it's again substandard, right? It's only got, Shaddy only had 11'2" ceiling height. This one is even less, it's 10'2".
Mm.
It's 2 acres, literally in the middle of nowhere. In fact, I'm gonna get out of this for a second and I'll show it to you on Google Maps. Hang on.
I was looking at Palladium as well, 301 Palladium.
I saw that, but I'd rather you do something like this, you know, where you're buying an existing building and you're building your cash flow almost from day one. So this is Akins Road. I'll just go to the aerial view. So this is, can you see it on the screen okay, guys?
Yep.
It's a long, skinny property. It has this 18,000 square foot warehouse here, totally substandard. It has a coverall building here, has an old farmhouse here, and another coverall building. But what I wanted to show you is look where it is. It's in the middle of nowhere. All right.
Yeah.
So now you can see it's south of Canada and I guess west of Barhaven, right? And it's literally in the middle of nowhere. And I'll just, sorry about this if I'm moving too fast. I'll go to the street view. Yeah. So you can see it's a gravel road. And here's the building again. Right? Oh, it even has, you can see my sign is up there.
Yeah.
And I just move over here a little bit. And I'm just panning around. And you can see literally it's in the middle of nowhere.
Oh.
All right. And there's the warehouse and there's the coverall building. You can't see the farmhouse in behind, maybe a little bit here. And I'll go back to my slide deck now. All right. So this guy here, this was advertised for sale, Armin, for over a year. Okay, I think it was like 400 days on the market. And I really wanted 3 young guys, a little bit older than you now, to buy it. And they said, what? It's vacant, you know, it's in the middle of nowhere. I said, yeah, but I think this mini workshop or micro workshop model is fantastic. So they ended up buying it. And I took an offer to the president of Modern Niagara, which is a big HVAC company, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning company. They were asking $990,000 for this. It's 2 acres with the buildings on it that I've described. And my client said, well, we don't have $1 million. I said, doesn't mean you have to pay $1 million. They offered, I brought the offer in for $250,000. And I went to see the president of Modern Niagara, and he said, this is an insulting offer, and he basically kicked me out of his office. And I went back to Warren and the other 2 guys, Chris and Mark, and said, no, we didn't get it. They were disappointed, but I said, let's wait. And that was September. So I waited until I think it was January. So maybe we waited 4 months. And I went back to see the president of the company. It still was for sale. And I said, look, you're a huge company. You know, you do hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. You're hanging on to this property, paying the property tax, you're maintaining it, you're heating it. You know, it's a waste. Just get it off your books. And he said, well, what was the offer again? I said, well, it was $250. And believe it or not, in January, when all Canadians want to kill themselves because it's so cold and dark, he accepted that offer. And they bought it for $250, and they put in a bunch of small workshops, which you can see in these pictures. Some of them are 200 square feet, 400 square feet. And the one on the right, where Heron is there, this is Heron here, is about 1,200 or 1,500 square feet. So the biggest was, I think, 1,200 or 1,500, and the smallest was, I think, 200. We leased the entire thing in 10 months, everything, including the farmhouse to an environmental company, the coverall buildings, and all the workshops. You can see that they put in some overhead doors, so they had big corridors, and it was fantastic. So they bought it for $250,000, and they put in about $450,000 of renovations. You know, a couple more bathrooms, more overhead doors, more corridors, etc. So they were at probably about $700,000, but it appraised again about 2.5 years out at over $3 million.
Well, yeah.
And the cash flow is terrific.
But how can somebody accept a price that's like a third of what they listed
It
for?
was a quarter.
A quarter, yeah, even
Well,
worse.
it's
How?
because it was 400 days
Yeah,
the market, 400 days. And the seller is a huge company. Like Modern Niagara, they have a beautiful new building. They probably do $300 or $400 million. Well, at least $300 million a year in revenues. Like whether they get 250 or 500 or even 990, which is what they were asking.
yeah.
So, I mean, listen, maybe, you know, maybe they would have said the second time, go to hell, but they didn't. They just, you know, I just said, look, get it off your books. The boys will take it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
Armin, you can't be shy about this. I mean, if you want to overpay, I'm just your coach. You go ahead. But I don't want you, you know, you make money in real estate when you buy, not when you sell, right?
right, yeah.
So we want to buy. And listen, if the boys had paid $500,000 for it, really, frankly, I would have been okay with that too. Because if you spend $500,000 on it and eventually appraises at $3.5 million, does it really matter? Well, to some extent it does, but not really. You know, they've done very well with the building. They're super happy with it.
The issue I see is just like telling this to the listing agent, unless we're working with the listing agent directly, you know, just telling the listing agent, hey, it's I'm offering a quarter. It
Yeah,
might be a
yeah.
barrier.
Well, Modern Niagara had this listed. It was one of those listings, you know, what do they call it, Armin, when it's just like a mere posting? So when I called the agent, like I only represented the buyer.
Yeah.
I don't like being in multiple rep, and you should not be in multiple rep either, in my opinion.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
you should represent yourself. So anyway, when I called up the agent for that building, he said, look, I just posted it. You got to go and talk to those guys. So, okay. So I went right to the president of the company,
Got it.
right? Which is great. The other thing I've done where the listing agent says basically F off because it's too low, I said, well, when you present the offer, Armin, you probably know this. We as buyer agents have the right to be present when he or she is presenting the offer to the seller. We have the right to be present. Yes. And I often have insisted on that. I said, okay, you don't like my offer. I understand that, but I have the right to be present. And they'll often say, no, you don't. I said, check your code of conduct. Right? I have the right to be present, and I want to be present, and I want to put my 2 cents in.
Yeah.
And that's what I do anyway. And because, you know, look, I mean, if it had been you two guys or me selling that building, we wouldn't have sold, we wouldn't ask 990 and sell for 250. But a large company like Modern Niagara, they just get it off their books. It's just a nuisance.
Yeah.
You can be sure that the head of maintenance is coming to the president saying, oh, listen, the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system on the roof at on Akins Road has gone. We have to put in a new 10-ton system. Oh, fuck. You know,
Yeah.
oh, hell with that. You know, what are we doing with this whole building? It's just, I don't want to hear about this. So eventually they get tired, right? And they just, you can wear them down. Sometimes it doesn't work, but you know, listen, when people tell me no, I don't like being told no, but I don't get upset. I mean, if I get upset, I get upset for maybe 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I go, okay, I'll do something else with my time.
Yeah.
But I don't get depressed because somebody tells me no. I mean, like I said, I might be disappointed for 10 or 15 minutes.
For sure. Yeah. Because the other thing I was also thinking about is there are so many listings. Well, granted, these are residential. There are so many listings on the market that have plans approved, but nobody wants to do their construction. Like they can't do it themselves because they're scared. Well, I don't know if they're scared. Maybe they don't have the funds and they'd be happy to take it on. But you know, it's just I'm just really trying to figure out this niche where nobody else is in it. And I can make a ton of money out of it, you know, and
100%. I mean, I get that. This is the last one I'll show. Then I actually probably have to go and pack for Australia. Where was I? Okay. I'll show you one more. This is what a client of mine, he's a contractor, his name's Savvy Kelsey, and smart guy. quite successful too. So this is an old school that he bought in Merrickville. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll show you. So this school is fantastic. It's got you know, a concrete roof. It's got block walls between each classroom all the way up to the underside of the slab, so it's fire separated. It's just an incredible building. Oh, sorry. There's some vandalism going on, but it's been cleaned up since then. I'll see if I can get to. Oh yeah, this is what I wanted to show you. This is so this building. Smith Falls is here, Merrickville's here, and this building is sort of midway between the two of them, right?
Yeah.
And it's in the middle of nowhere. It is a 16,000 square foot building that Savvy, my client, with 9 acres of land, bought for $650,000. And what he's going to do is he's going to turn it, guess what, into storage and workshops. It's perfectly set up for that. The classrooms are already there and they're fire separated. So, you know, we think he can make, I don't know, maybe $15,000 to $18,000 a month gross from this building. And he still has 9 acres, which he can do, you know, contractor yards or RV parking, boat parking, equipment parking, whatever. I mean, I don't know what else he'll do with it, but just the building alone, imagine buying a 16,800 square foot building. I think that's what it is, for $650,000, and you have 9 acres of land.
Wow.
That is fantastic. So here's just a few more pictures of it. It needs some work.
But aren't you worried, like if somebody takes up this property, aren't they worried that nobody might show up, I guess, to rent out the spaces just because it's in the middle? Well, I know on Akins Road they did, just because it's kind of close proximately to.
Oh yeah, I mean it's 15 minutes to Barhaven, right?
Yeah, but like for this one, aren't they worried that nobody might sign up, or the location might be in the rural areas, you know? Because that'd be my concern. I don't know.
For sure. I'll see if I can get it. Yeah. So yeah, I've shown you enough pictures. I think you're not wrong about that. It is a concern. But I'll show you something that will maybe give you some confidence that we're not totally harebrained. See if I can find one more, and then I gotta go. I gotta pack.
Where is the
Hang on a sec. I'll see if I can find it. Give me 1 second here. Okay, I got to show you this. This is crazy. Do you know where Picton is? Picton, Ontario?
I think it's near west of Kingston, I think it was, right?
Yeah. So Picton is in Prince Edward County, right?
Yeah.
And you know, if you think about Merrickville, I think it has about 6,000 or 8,000 people, and Smith Falls is probably 10,000, and it's doing quite well. So when Savvy bought this, I showed him what's going on in Picton. This is the old Picton Airbase, all right?
Okay.
And Picton is only 4,500 people. So Smith Falls about 10 or 11,000, Merrickville's about 6,000 or 8,000, and this is in the middle of those two places, about 12 minutes or something like that from each one.
Okay.
This is Picton, Ontario, which is only 4,500 people. So clients of mine bought this airbase from the government of Canada, and they didn't pay very much for it. I think I got that on the previous slide. Yeah, they paid $485,000 for it, and it had 41 usable buildings.
Wow.
And we talked about the workshop model, and they liked it. And so they started to rent these to, this is, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, might be too small. This is a yoga studio.
Yeah.
And this is Maggie's Gone to Pot. That's not cannabis, that's pottery. All right, so don't think it's weed. It's not weed. This guy, I took a picture of him. He's got a little museum in here, which he runs every weekend.
Oh.
And there's like contractors in here who do doors and windows and everything else.
Wow.
So what happened was they had 42 usable buildings. They rented every one of them, not for very much money, $350, $400 a month. But this time I won't make you do any work, Ario. I'll do it with my handy dandy calculator. They had 42 buildings, averaging about 300. Some of them were quite a bit bigger and they got more, but just say 350 a month times 12 gave them $176,000 of gross income. Now you multiply that by 0.66, so about 34%, right? Goes out the window for OPEX, operating expenses. So you multiply that by 0.66. You get operating income of $116,000. They paid $435,000 for the site. So their cap rate is probably 20%. And wait, it gets even better. The city or the town of Picton decided to extend services to the airbase.
Wow.
And so they have I think they have over 600 acres there that they could develop. I mean, that could be worth millions, possibly tens of millions of dollars.
Was this listed on MLS or was this like a auction or
this was Government of Canada. They have their own site where they're disposing of properties. And my clients in Toronto, I did not find this. They called me up. They said, well, what could we do with it? And as soon as I saw the pictures that they had taken, which I showed you here, I said, oh, I think you could do the small workshop model, because we've been working on that Akins Road property in Canada for, it must be now 7 or 8 years. And I know the model works, and Shaddy's been doing it for at least 5 or 6. So I said, what they just put a bid in, right?
Yeah.
It just came up with a number, 435.5, I think. And nobody else bid. I think they were the only bidder. So Canada just gave it to them. It's like, I think it's 700 acres.
Jesus, yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, so there are opportunities, but Armin, we started this with the word patience and persistence, right? And research. So don't worry if you don't find what you're looking for the first hour of the first day that you're looking.
Yeah.
But keep looking, and don't buy anything without talking to your coach.
No, don't worry.
No.
We haven't even found anything to be able to show it to you. But yeah, I mean, we've looked around. There are, I don't know, projects, of course, but yeah.
But now that you understand the different models, you're going to wander around Ottawa, wander around the countryside. You're all out about doing appraisals. You're going to see things differently, the two of you. You should look on Kijiji. You should look on LoopNet, Crexi, MLS. Government websites. You just be patient and do the research.
Yeah, for sure. We'll do.
Right. And keep me in the loop. If I don't hear from you, then I can't help you. Right.
Yeah.
So email me and let me know what you're doing. If you see that place, where was the place you're going to go look at?
Munster.
Munster. Yeah, I like Munster.
Yeah.
You know what's close by, right? Is Saunders Farm, right?
Yeah, it's right by Saunders Farm, and it's just a vacant retail single tenanted. It used to be a Manulife bank, and now it was.
Let's go look at it. Okay, all right. We're gonna do one more thing before I go back. Let me share my screen with you. Have you got the street address in Munster?
Yeah, it's 2871 Munster Road.
All right, hang on. Get rid of that. Say it again.
2871 Munster Road. Yeah, it's right there. Yeah. Been on the market for 120 days. Used to be a bank and a Max convenience store.
Whoa. Yeah, how big is the site?
Site is 0.25 acres.
Is it on water and sewer, or is it on well and septic?
It's on water and sewer, and but the gas is I think it has natural gas as well, I think. Yeah. It has everything.
Wow, that's great. So what would you do with it?
Well, there's a safe from the bank, so I wanted to first lease it out to a gun store if possible, like a gunsmith, but that might be hard to do. So I guess the only way right now that comes to my mind is just divvying it up and renting the spaces, or putting it for lease on the market and just see what happens.
How much are how much are they asking for this property?
600K.
And how many square feet is it?
That's something I don't know, just because they haven't advertised it, and I haven't really looked at it.
Well, we can figure that out ourselves. Come on. Let's go back here. So let's go to the aerial photograph. You know how this works, right? You can
Yeah,
measure
you do
things with,
massing and all that.
yeah, you measure distance with Google, right? You know how to do this, right?
Nope. First time, but I've learned it.
Okay, all right. So I screwed up a little bit, but I'll pull it. Oop. All right. So it looks like the building's about 2,300 square feet.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to clear this. And so what you do is you right click on this and you go measure distance. All right.
Okay.
And then you left click on the corner of the building. Oops. I'll get rid of that.
I just saw the MLS listing. It says 2000.
Well, I wasn't too far off, was I?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
But I want you to know how to do this. All right. So left click, left click, left click, join it to, and obviously I'm too big, so I'll just reduce it a bit. All right. So it's about 2,000 square feet, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So what we would do, oops. Let's go back in here. We're going to do it real quick. All right. It is December 18, right? 18,
Yeah.
2023. And give me the address again.
2871 Münster Road.
That'll do. Area is, how many square feet was it?
It's
2,000.
side area is 10,000.
Oh,
No, the area of the building.
Building is 2000, 1933.
Okay. And area of the land is 10,000 square feet?
Yeah, 10,700.
All right. So we'll say units. We'll end up with say we can create 3 units, all right?
Yeah.
Which means each one will be about this many square feet, right?
Mhm.
Okay. And it could be retail or workshop, right?
Correct. Yeah.
We'll say. And we're gonna wrap that. Retail, we're gonna ask for, I don't know, we'll ask for $24 per square foot per year, triple net, okay?
Mhm.
It will make it 22 because it's Munster. And the workshop, we'll ask for $30. This is per square foot per year, and that's gross, okay?
Correct. Okay.
All right. So let's say retail equals retail. Let's say we have 1 retail unit, oops, 1, okay? And workshop, we'll say we get 2 workshop guys, right? So that's equal. Notice how I link all these sites, right? 3 minus 1, all these cells, right? So our revenues are for the retail is equal to, we've got 1 unit times $22 per square foot triple net times that many square feet per year, right?
Yeah.
Triple net. Okay, and for our workshops, our revenues are equal to, and don't forget, OpEx is 34%, right? You remember that?
Yeah.
That's just a number we use, all right? So for our workshops, we're gonna get how much? We have 2 of them. They're this many square feet. We're gonna multiply it by 30. Then we're gonna multiply it by 1 minus 34%, and that gives us, for those 2, per year.
Yeah.
And now that's equivalent to a triple net, right?
Yeah.
Triple net is equal to net operating income, right? So net operating income now is this. You just sum those 2 guys per year, okay?
Yeah.
And let's say our purchase price, I'll send you this spreadsheet, obviously, price. Let's say our purchase price is, what do you think you might offer on it?
Well, it's listed for 600. I'd be happy if I can get away with these numbers at 550, I guess.
All right, so I'm gonna put it in at 525.
525.
That's just a guess.
Yeah.
All right, and then we've got land transfer tax and legals. We'll put in just the number here, $2,500. Land transfer tax, I don't know. I'll go over here at land. There's lots of sites that calculate, right? So we got, how much was it again? 525, 525, 000, calculate. All right, so we got this. Guys, you guys are keeping me a little longer. That's okay, we gotta finish this. Now we're into it. So land transfer tax is that. And then we'll say renos, we'll put in, say you can divide it up for $65,000, okay? Oops. Okay, and we'll put contingencies in. I can't spell it, contingents. I spell contingent.
GE.
I don't know if I got it right. I will say 8%.
Yeah.
Equals this times 8. That's probably not enough. We'll say 15 just because we're guessing. All right. Total cost. This is very approximate. You guys know that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So your cap rate is equal to this divided by that, right? That's, now, do you remember what I said your going in cap rate has to be?
8.
Yeah, so this is a fail.
Yeah. Not ideal.
No. All right, oops. So we'll just call this, we'll call this case 1. All right, just highlight that in yellow. Okay, oops. And all right, so now I'm going to version this. I better save it first. Oops, cancel that. I'll save it in your file folder. Oops. All right. So we've got case 1 now, right?
Yep.
Now I'm going to save it again, just version it. It's simple to do. I'll call it case 2. All right, so I'll go up in here, change it to case 2. I'll give it a different color. So now the question is, what price can we pay for this and change that to 8%? So Armin, because I linked all of these cells, I can change this number and it will automatically recalculate, okay?
Right.
So I'm gonna go 475,000, and I'm gonna hit enter. When I hit enter, watch what happens to the 6.5. It goes to 7.1. So I'm gonna go 425. We're getting close. 405. There you go. I'll give that the same color.
Yeah.
So what this does, this little exercise does, is that if you pay more than $400,000 for this thing, or 405, it fails.
Yeah.
And you have to have discipline, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
what I would do is I'd go look at it, because this is experience for you. I'd go look at it, right? And take some pictures and get a feel for it. And then you're gonna say to the listing agent, Jesus, it's probably not worth even half of what you're asking. It's probably only worth 300 grand. So if you go in with an offer at 400,000, you'll think he won.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense, but that is exactly how I look at it. That's how I buy property. That's how 2,500 people I coach buy property.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All right. Sounds good. I'll let you
All
go
right, we
then.
have a recording of this. It'll be on YouTube. I'll send you the replay. I hope you didn't go to sleep on me, Ariel.
I'm here, don't worry.
It's really great to see you guys again. Keep me in the loop,
Thank you.
but go and see this. And this will be a very good exercise for both of you, because this has
Yeah.
potential if you can get it for 400 grand. Because there's some other things that we could do with the parking lot. For example, you might put a food truck in the parking lot, right?
Yeah.
You might do some other stuff.
There's a safe there as well, so I don't know.
Exactly. There's all kinds of things you could do with it. But what we want to make sure is that you're buying it cheap enough so that if we make a mistake, you're still cash flowing this property.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
any animations like adding a food truck or anything else that could add to your income, that belongs to you, not to the seller. I mean, the seller does, just sitting
Yeah.
there with this thing empty.
Yeah, exactly.
See you guys. Back
All right,
again.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a fun trip.
Thank you.
Bye.